Hello out there, and today we're taking a look at the Hinderer Knives XM Slippy Slicer. And this knife here is actually the third Hinderer that my buddy George has sent me to check out and review for the channel. So first of all, George, I really appreciate you doing that. And for those of you who don't know, George sends me these knives while he's deployed serving our country overseas. So again, my deep appreciation for everything that you're doing there, George. Hopefully you enjoyed this review today. And today, guys, we're just going to go through what is a really interesting development and a new direction for Hinderer knives, with them making slip joints out of some of their classic designs, trying to make, I guess, a more versatile line for different people out there. And so we're going to go through some of the really positive things about that, and there are a lot of those. This is a really good knife in a lot of ways, but it also is a little bit of a frustrating one too, so we'll talk about that. And then at the end of the day, we'll go over the price point and answer the question, is this a knife that that I need for myself? Is this one I want to pick up for my own collection? And who is this knife for, if not for me? All right, so let's get started with some size comparisons. What we have here is a blade length of 3 inches, but the cutting edge is more like 2.6. And so when we're looking at size comparisons, it actually is a pretty comparable knife to the Benchmade Mini Griptilian, which is actually a little bit longer when it comes to the cutting edge. And right on par with the Spyderco Delica. So overall length and the actual cutting edge length is pretty much identical there. Now looking at a more traditional slip joint like the Benchmade proper, even though it is a current slip joint, it's a more traditional one. And then the best size comparison is definitely going to be to a Hinderer knife itself. So here's another XM18, another 3-inch one. This is the Wharncliffe version though. And you can see just certainly the size comparison, it's right on. And we have almost identical shape to the frame of the knife. Some differences here in that the typical XM18 is open frame and the slip joint is not. Also, when we look at this lock side here, you can see that the clips look to be interchangeable as well as the size of the filler tabs, but the pivot is extremely different in size, and so are the body screws. So if you're looking to customize like one of the Slippies, you might have to hold out until they start making specialized scales for that, because I don't think that you'll be able to just go with like the standard custom scales and hardware from the XM18. If you do know anything more about that, definitely comment down below and let me know so we can share that with everyone who's watching. I would definitely appreciate that. All right, but getting into the knife itself and talking about some of the qualities, it's interesting because when you look at this knife, you can look at it and think about it in two different ways. You can think about it compared to other knives as a Hinderer, or you can think about it compared to other knives as a slip joint. And when you're thinking about this knife compared to other slip joints, it stands out in a lot of ways. This knife is certainly a modern slip joint, because it is a modern design that's just adapted to become a slip joint. And so some of the things that really impress me compared to other slip joints that are out there, starting with the grind and the steel and just the functionality of the knife, this one is certainly going to be maybe a step above a lot of its competition. The first thing that jumps out at me as impressive is the steel. CPM 20CV, that's a great steel, a really high-end premium steel that, you see a lot in, some of the really trendy folders of the time, and not necessarily something that is in a lot of the traditional slip joints. So really happy to see that steel. I really like this grind, by the way. The slicer grind is my favorite look of all the Hinderer knives. So definitely some good qualities there. Let me try to get this closer to the camera, see if we can get this focused. There is a light stonewash here. It's very attractive, good looking blade overall. And then we have a forward choil, and the forward choil is important for a couple reasons, but one of them is that the spring tension on this knife isn't excellent. So it's not going to be like the hardest knife to close. And when I'm thinking about like some slip joints that are tough to close, like the Spyderco Pingo here, I mean, this one takes a significant amount of force to pop shut. There's a lot of tension there. The proper actually has a lot more as well. So the proper is a little bit stronger and more difficult to close. So having this forward choil on a knife that is easier to close, it does provide a little bit of protection. And so, when you are closing the knife, you will have like this intermediary stop right here, and it is a wide stop, but before the knife closes, you'll have plenty of space, and having this forward choil protects the finger for a little bit longer. So I really do think it would be difficult to close this knife on your finger if you're paying attention in any way at all. You should be pretty safe. But it is good for multiple grip configurations as well, so it definitely works. One of the big wins when it comes to ergos and to the blade itself is this piece right here. And I don't know if this is a new innovation for this design, but it is a very, very cool thing. And what we have is basically an adjustable thumb disc. And I'm trying to find where that tool is. Here we go. So here's the tool that adjusts the thumb disc. And basically what you can do is stick that tool into the slot here and unscrew it and slide it across what looks like a fuller to basically put the thumb disc anywhere that you want. So depending on your hand size or just the method that you like to open your knives, you can use that thumb disc, any position that you want it to be in, or you can actually remove it completely if you want it to two-hand open the knife or just don't think that it looks good. Personally, I think that I slightly adjusted it. I moved it completely up and down a couple times, but then as I used the knife, I adjusted it a couple more times to get to a spot that I really wanted it. And I think that this is pretty close to the place that it came in. So yeah, for me, just being able to open the knife like that. And then one other thing that it does is, it can provide a ramp or just a spot of comfort when you're actually using the knife. So that aspect of it is a really smart home run. And again, I don't know if this is an innovation just for this design or if it's something that was taken from something else. I've never seen it before, and I'm just impressed with it overall, because if you don't like the look of it, you can just remove it and the knife looks pretty cool without it. But for me, I think being able to open and close the knife easily, makes this a very functional little addition to a slip joint. So big props there. Now, as we're moving on back, you can see the G10 here is impressive. Really nice pattern on it. Certainly not something that is even though it is Gent's folder capable, this is a very functional texturing on the G10. Really like the pattern here. The way that it feels in hand, it's like a medium to high traction. This gray color, you can see, is going to get dirty. It is very easy to clean, so that has a lot going for it. Of all the different colors that that this model came out in, I think there was blue, black, green. I want to say brown also. The gray for me is definitely the most attractive, but they didn't roll it out with just one color and then come out with more later, so you'd kick yourself for picking the wrong one. They rolled them all out at the same time with a bunch of different colors, so really like that, giving you that option right off the bat instead of coming out with one and then down the road, oh man, I wish I had waited, I could have gotten this color or whatever. So really nice of them to give those options from the get-go. As we continue to move on back, you can see we have a lanyard hole here. We do have a one side, so right side only, but 2-position pocket clip. And yeah, I think that gets it done for the basic qualities of the knife. Now I just want to talk about the knife a little bit in use and then some of the slight issues that I had with it. In use, one of the things that I was concerned with was just that, because there isn't that much tension on this, that it might not be, that safe when I'm using it heavily. And I did use this knife pretty heavily, but for the most part, I used it in this kind of grip. So I used the jimping back here, and the jimping is, you can see, pretty nicely done, and it is good and grippy without being sharp. So I used it like this most of the time, and that worked great. Never had any kind of integrity or safety issues. And you can see if you're bearing down right here on the jimping, that rolls over to where the spine is, so it makes it harder for the knife to start to close. And then again, as I said, if you choke up, then you're going to make it even safer, because even if it does start to close on you, you're going to be just fine. But I didn't have any issues at all, and I was cutting cardboard and doing some pretty medium to heavy EDC tasks, whatever you would come across in a day-to-day basis, and didn't have any issues at all with with this knife fluctuating up and down too much. So it worked just fine for me. Really liked the way that it was functionally. So good positive feeling about that. But then let's talk about one of the issues, the main issue that I had with this knife. And it was all about adjustment. Again, I've only had these few Hinderers that have been on loan from George, so I don't know that much about how like Hinderer tools work and pivot screw and proprietary hardware and all that stuff. So I was trying to tighten this as much as I could just to see how we could tighten that tension there, if that would be possible, and just try to loosen the pivot, tighten it, and see what that would be. And I was just not able to do it. And I wasn't able to do it because of this piece right here. And I didn't know that with Hinderers you have to buy a special tool to be able to take this apart. I wasn't aware of that. Obviously the other ones that George has sent me, I'm not trying to take those apart. I'm just using them and testing them, and don't want to take apart someone else's knife. But I wanted to, again, just like try to loosen and adjust this one, and I wasn't able to do it. And so that's how I learned all of the fancy tricks that you have to go through if you don't have the tool, which costs about 50 to 70, upwards of $100, depending on where you're looking. And so I was told that you should try to take a penny and Dremel a penny and make like a tool that could get into this spot right here and turn it. And the penny, because of the amount of Loctite or whatever they're using, was just way too soft. So there were 2 notches here, and the penny just was so soft that it bent, folded, and wasn't useful. So I took a piece of stainless steel and Dremeled the tool out of that. And what this piece of steel is actually from, funny thing, it's from the frame lock of the Kershaw, which one? Kershaw Deadline. So yeah, the Kershaw Deadline, I had a scrap Deadline, and I took the piece. And so this piece fits in to the pivot here and allows you to adjust while you're using the Torx driver on the other side. And that's one other thing to note, actually, if you didn't notice earlier when I was talking, most of the Hinderers will have like a flathead. This new Slippy has a Torx driver bit that you're going to have to use, T8. But I just thought it was weird. I thought it was weird that for, a couple $100 you're paying for a knife that you have to still pay for the tool to adjust it. I don't really care for that. And I understand that maybe from Hinderer's perspective, they want to have proprietary hardware to keep the integrity of their knives since they are expensive, keep people from messing with them unless they really want to. And I do also understand that not everybody wants to, so, including a tool in the package of a knife might make it more expensive than it needs to be. But man, I think for $275 for this, or for $350, $400 for a lot of regular Hinderers, I don't know, they're good knives, so I can't really say that it's not worth it, but I would sort of like there to be some kind of concession to allow you to adjust the knife yourself. That's just my piece, because it really was a bit of a pain in the ass to make this happen and to Dremel it out. And not everybody has a Dremel tool where they can just make one of those on the fly. So yeah, definitely something to keep in mind if you are going to pick up this knife. You might have to make an additional investment, in order to make any adjustments. So overall, though, I mean, it is a different kind of slip joint. There's no doubt about that. So I think that this knife was marketed to people overseas, or maybe people in areas who want to have a Hinderer but are sort of not able to get one because of knife laws wherever you might be, and this can alleviate that. You can get a slip joint in a really nice steel and have the Hinderer design, but have it in a more legal and less intimidating maybe package. That said, I really struggled to incorporate this into my EDC because for my purposes, to be honest with you guys, this knife really doesn't have a spot. When I'm carrying a knife every day, I want it to have a locking mechanism. I want it to lock up. My primary EDC every single day is always going to have a locking mechanism. Now I do carry slip joints, and that's something that has sort of evolved over the course of the past year. And I carry as a backup my Benchmade Proper, which I really like. And sometimes as a backup, I'll carry the Pingo or a couple of the other slip joints that I have. But I never carry just a dedicated slip joint. And so for me, the slip joints that I'm going to carry are going to be more traditional, more backup, focused, more light kind of duty knives. So I don't really have a specific need personally for this. Do I like the knife? Absolutely. Would I like to keep it? Sure, I'd love to keep it. But I'm not going to be in the mindset of paying $275 for this knife. If I'm going to spend $275, I'm going to spend an extra $100 and get, a Hinderer that locks up and get the whole shebang. Definitely. So I am not the target audience when it comes to who this knife was made and designed for. But there are certainly plenty of people out there who are. And again, those are probably going to be the international people, or maybe people who just on a day-to-day basis like to carry slip joints and would like a Hinderer. Again, $275. This is not an inexpensive knife. There are definitely very good competitive options out there. But if you want a Hinderer design, and for some reason you can't get one that locks up, and this is definitely the way to go. It's a good knife. It's well built. I can't really knock Hinderer for anything that they've done construction wise. So it's on point. It's just a matter of, is this something that is going to fit into what your needs are and what your preferences are? All right, guys. So let me know about that down below. Is this something that you would want, or if you had $275, would you spend it elsewhere on a locking knife or on a different kind of slip joint? Let me know your thoughts. But anyway, again, my thanks to George for sending this my way, and any other questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, as always, let me know down below. But I will talk with you soon, guys. Have a good one and take care.